Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a story that's shaking Russia's strategic foundations and leaving the Kremlin scrambling for answers. Vladimir Putin's dream of a secure land bridge, connecting mainland Russia to Crimea, a critical supply and military lifeline, appears to be collapsing. What was once considered one of Russia's most significant wartime achievements is now turning into a logistical and political nightmare. Ukraine's relentless counterattacks, precision strikes, and targeted infrastructure assaults have pushed Moscow into a corner, leaving Putin furious as his land bridge dream dies before his eyes. The concept of this land bridge was born from the chaos of war. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, one of the main goals was to seize southern Ukraine and create a direct overland corridor to Crimea. For Moscow, this corridor meant control over trade routes, energy supplies, and most importantly, military logistics. It was a symbol of permanence, a message to the world that Crimea was now firmly within Russia's grasp. But as we're seeing today, that dream is fading fast. Ukraine's recent offensives have targeted key nodes across southern Zaporizhia and along the coast of the Sea of Azov, slowly slicing through Russia's strategic map. Ukraine's military has adapted faster than most analysts expected. Using advanced Western, supplied systems and innovative tactics, Kiev has turned the land bridge into a death trap for Russian logistics. The region's railways, highways, and supply depots have become the focus of precision strikes that cripple Moscow's ability to sustain its occupying forces. Each strike, each explosion, isn't just about destroying equipment, it's about dismantling Russia's narrative of control. What Putin once called an unbreakable link to Crimea is now riddled with vulnerabilities. The situation intensified when Ukraine began systematically targeting bridges and transport corridors that connect Mariupol, Melitopol, and Berdyansk, key nodes of the land bridge. These cities were once strongholds symbolizing Russia's control over the region. But satellite imagery and recent intelligence show that explosions, fires, and sabotage have become almost routine. Russian convoys now face ambushes, drones, and precision artillery fire on roads they once considered safe. Supply trucks are forced to take longer, more dangerous detours. Fuel shortages and broken logistics chains are grinding down Russian morale and mobility. For Putin, this is more than a tactical problem. It's a psychological blow. The land bridge wasn't just a military achievement. It was personal. It represented his long-standing mission to restore Russia's influence over the former Soviet space. For years, Putin portrayed Crimea as a symbol of Russian resurgence. The bridge linking Russia and Crimea, the Kerch Bridge, was its crown jewel. But when Ukraine struck that bridge multiple times and now with the land corridor under siege, the illusion of Russian stability began to crumble. Each new strike exposes the fragility of Moscow's grip. Inside the Kremlin, frustration is reportedly boiling over. Russian officials are struggling to explain how their fortified zones are failing. The once proud image of an invincible Russian army is giving way to reports of disarray, desertions, and internal blame. Military bloggers loyal to the Kremlin have started openly criticizing commanders for poor planning and underestimating Ukraine's ability to strike deep behind enemy lines. Meanwhile, Western intelligence agencies believe this shift could mark a major turning point in the war, a potential unraveling of Russia's territorial ambitions. Ukraine's campaign isn't just about retaking land. It's about cutting the arteries that keep Russia's war machine alive. By severing supply lines, Ukraine is forcing Moscow to depend even more heavily on the Kerch Bridge, a structure that remains vulnerable to further strikes. Every time Ukraine damages a rail line or depot along the Azov corridor, it forces Russia into logistical chaos. Repair crews rush to patch the damage, only to be hit again days later. It's a war of attrition fought with precision, patience, and timing, and it's working. The human cost, however, is immense. Both sides have suffered losses, and civilian areas across southern Ukraine remain caught in the crossfire. Towns like Tokmak and Melitopol, once quiet agricultural centers, are now heavily militarized zones. The population has either fled or lives under occupation, enduring shortages of food, electricity, and medical supplies. Yet even amid this suffering, Ukraine's resistance hasn't wavered. The land bridge that once symbolized Russian dominance is now a battlefield of attrition, a narrow strip of contested territory where neither side can claim complete control. As the fighting continues, Western analysts suggest that Russia's strategic situation could worsen dramatically in the coming months. If Ukraine succeeds in fully cutting the corridor between Crimea and mainland Russia, Moscow's forces on the peninsula would face isolation. Supplying them would require long, exposed sea routes across the Black Sea or risky flights vulnerable to Ukrainian air defenses. This would effectively trap tens of thousands of Russian troops, turning Crimea into a logistical burden instead of a strategic asset. For Putin, such an outcome would be catastrophic. It would undermine everything he's fought to portray as success. The Russian media machine has spent years glorifying the so-called reunification of Crimea, using it as proof of Putin's strength. Now, with supply lines collapsing and bridges burning, that narrative is turning into a liability. Kremlin insiders reportedly fear the political fallout if Russian forces are forced to retreat or if Crimea becomes indefensible. That fear has begun to manifest in censorship, tighter propaganda control, and arrests of those who question the war's direction. Internationally, the disintegration of the land bridge could reshape the entire conflict. It would prove that Ukraine's strategy of targeting infrastructure is not only effective but decisive. It could also embolden Western allies to increase support, seeing tangible results on the battlefield. On the other hand, Russia might escalate its attacks in retaliation, striking deeper into Ukrainian cities to project strength. Yet such actions only further isolate Moscow diplomatically and strain its already overstretched resources. The morale gap between the two sides is growing wider. Ukrainian soldiers, despite exhaustion, are motivated by a sense of liberation and national pride. They're fighting to reclaim their homeland, not just defend positions. Meanwhile, many Russian troops have begun questioning the purpose of this war. Reports of intercepted communications reveal growing resentment among Russian soldiers, complaints about poor supplies, lack of leadership, and a deep sense of futility. The myth of a quick and decisive victory has vanished. Economically, the war's toll is also visible. Russia's defense budget has ballooned, draining funds from civilian sectors. Sanctions continue to bite, and the cost of maintaining occupation zones is skyrocketing. The Kremlin's attempt to mask these realities through propaganda can't hide the cracks showing in daily life. Rising inflation, shortages, and war fatigue among ordinary Russians. The dream of a revived empire is proving too expensive to sustain. Ukraine's progress on the battlefield has been fueled by resilience and innovation. Western technologies like long-range missiles and reconnaissance drones have transformed its ability to strike key targets. But beyond hardware, it's the determination of Ukraine's people that stands out. They've managed to turn the tide against a much larger adversary, using strategy instead of sheer numbers. Each successful strike on the land bridge represents more than a tactical win, it's a symbol of endurance, defiance, and hope. The international community watches closely as this chapter unfolds. NATO leaders see the crumbling land bridge as validation of their continued support. European nations, once cautious about provoking Moscow, now feel more confident in supplying advanced weapons to Kiev. The unity of purpose among Ukraine's allies remains one of Putin's biggest frustrations. His attempts to divide them through energy blackmail and disinformation have largely failed. Instead, his own missteps have united the world against him. Inside Russia, cracks are appearing not just in the military, but in the political elite. Oligarchs and regional leaders are quietly expressing concern about the war's direction and the growing strain on the economy. Some reports suggest tension between the defense ministry and private military factions still loyal to the late Wagner Group leadership. Putin's control, though still firm, faces unprecedented pressure from within. As winter approaches, the challenges multiply. Harsh weather will complicate logistics, making it harder for Russia to transport supplies through damaged infrastructure. Ukrainian forces, equipped with better winter gear and Western support, are preparing to maintain pressure even in freezing conditions. For Russia, every kilometer of the land bridge becomes harder to defend. The constant threat of drones, sabotage, and partisan attacks keeps the region on edge. Putin's frustration has reportedly reached a breaking point. Intelligence leaks suggest he's demanding rapid countermeasures, more air defenses, new fortifications, and harsher punishments for perceived failures. But none of these can fix the fundamental problem. Russia overextended itself. The land bridge dream relied on stability and control, two things that no longer exist on the ground. Ukraine has proven that mobility, adaptability, and intelligence can outweigh sheer size and firepower. The symbolism of the land bridge's collapse extends far beyond the battlefield. It's a metaphor for the unraveling of Putin's broader vision. The dream of restoring Russian greatness through conquest is eroding under the weight of its own contradictions. Every destroyed bridge, every disrupted convoy, and every retreat exposes the limits of power built on fear and force. The Kremlin's silence about the true state of the war speaks volumes. The question now is how Putin will respond. Historically, he has doubled down in the face of setbacks, resorting to escalation rather than compromise. But this time, his options are narrowing. Domestic discontent, international isolation, and military exhaustion leave little room for victory speeches. The Russian president may try to project confidence, but behind closed doors, even his closest advisors must realize that the land bridge dream, a cornerstone of his Ukraine strategy, is slipping away for good. For Ukraine, this moment is both a victory and a warning. The fight is far from over, and Russia remains capable of immense destruction. Yet the symbolic power of reclaiming or neutralizing the land bridge will resonate for generations. It represents not just a territorial gain, but a moral triumph, or proof that even against overwhelming odds, determination and strategy can rewrite the course of history. So as the dust rises over the battered roads of southern Ukraine, one truth becomes clear. The dream that once connected Russia to Crimea is now a nightmare for the Kremlin. What began as a show of strength has turned into a lesson in overreach. Putin's furious reaction may echo through the halls of Moscow, but on the ground, the cracks in his empire are widening, and with every passing day, the once proud land bridge, the lifeline of his ambitions, edges closer to collapse. In the end, wars are not only fought with weapons, but with willpower, strategy, and resilience. Ukraine's persistence has shown the world that power built on oppression cannot last forever. The death of Putin's land bridge dream marks not just a setback for Russia, but a turning point for the entire conflict. It signals that even the mightiest ambitions can crumble when faced with unwavering resistance. And as we continue to follow this unfolding story, one thing is certain: the tide of this war is shifting. The world is witnessing the slow but steady unraveling of a geopolitical illusion. Putin's land bridge dream is dying, and with it, perhaps, the myth of Russia's unstoppable advance. Thanks for watching, and if you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest global events shaping our world today.